Welcome to another episode of the We Have a Meeting podcast. Today we've got a very, very special guest. Some people might consider him a competitor. We certainly don't. We think of him as a sales savant, a cold call killer, and a prospecting pro. We've got the phone jacker with us today, Callum Beecroft. Callum, how are you, sir?
All good, thanks for having me on. How are you guys?
All good. Jack's got COVID, but I'm wonderful.
I'm great. It's better to see your face. Better to see the phone jacker's face.
I love it.
So, one thing, Callum, that I've not been clear on, you're a mysterious man. So, how did you get into sales? Are you a man who's been doing it for generations, or are you new in the last few years? How did you start in sales?
How did I start? That's a good question. I think I've been in sales for probably 7 years now. So, quite a long time. How I got into it, basically, when I did a university degree, I did it in marketing. And as part of that degree, there was like a year's placement. So you did 2 years, third year was a placement of work, and then come back and do your final year. And when I did that placement year, I luckily managed to land a gig at Microsoft. So I did that for a year, and it was like an account management role in like the advertising side of the business. So I did that, and then they offered me a job when I graduated, and I came back and I fucking hated it. So I was going through this process with my manager, who was really helpful, when he was like, what do you want to do? And he started lining up some conversations with other people at the business, right? And I would, obviously, marketing degree, that was an interest. So I was speaking to some marketing people, like what's the job like, what are the career opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And I was also speaking to some people on the sales side. And I just remember one afternoon, still remember it now, I was sat there in this job. It was like account management, but it was project management. And the buck always stops with project management, right? Because you're the ones that have got to deliver these projects on time and stuff. So it was stressful. I was working a lot of hours. I fucking hated it. And I just remember one afternoon, some of the sales guys that I worked closely with, they were walking out the office at like midday, and they were going on a client lunch. And I just thought, you know what, that looks fucking easy. Why don't I try and get into sales? And I don't know how long afterwards, but there was basically a sales job came up, closely aligned to the business that I was working on. So I knew the product really well, right? And I just went for that job, and for some reason they gave it to me, and that's when it all started, my sales journey. But yeah, back in like 2013, 14, probably 14.
Wow, probably.
And were you a natural?
No, I was fucking rubbish. Fucking rubbish. Yeah, I was useless. Yeah, I basically, it was a bit of a weird job, right? So, without going into too much detail, there's like a sales team for the advertising business at Microsoft. So like all the products you'd know, Skype, Office, Xbox, they had like MSN, all this stuff. And you had a core sales team that used to sell advertising space on these products. And they had these specialist roles. And I used to work on Xbox, and I got this specialist role for Xbox. So I basically had a revenue target, but I had this core sales team that were basically selling the product for me. And so I didn't really have to manage like proposals and doing the kind of day-to-day stuff that salespeople typically do. I was there, I basically got wheeled out to do presentations and be an evangelist for Xbox, help out with proposals and stuff. And I very rarely closed any of the deals, right? So I had this revenue target, but everyone else was selling for me. And the first 9 months were brilliant. I think I hit 140% or something. But again, it was nothing really down to me, right? I had loads of people selling for me. And then shit hit the fan the next 9 months. I made enough commission from that I just thought, fuck this, I'm going traveling. So I went and did that for 9 months, and then came back and got another sales gig. So yeah, I thought this gig was easy when I did those first 9 months, making all this money, and then yeah, it's been downhill ever since.
Amazing. And so we can fast forward a little bit. As you know, we're all advocates of Mr. Benjamin Dennehy. We've got a photo of him like a messiah framed on our wall. So where did the journey come in there? So you were working in a sales job, and can you talk us through the story? What happened and what motivated you to say, I want to take this a bit seriously?
Yeah. So my last gig when I was employed, before I went self-employed, was still selling kind of advertising, sales, marketing services for online sports books and casinos. And I did that. I thought, yeah, this is exciting. And I think for maybe like the first year I was doing okay, right? Like I've always had a good work ethic. I mentioned this on a video the other day. I've always had a good work ethic. I'm going to blow smoke up my ass, right? But the problem is when you're shit at something, doing more of it is not a good strategy. Right? So I was getting somewhere because I was working hard, but I was missing a lot of opportunities on the way, and I didn't really realise why, right? And then COVID hit. So we're going back a couple of years, right? And the thing with COVID and sports books specifically is a lot of the live sports events just closed, right? The Premier League being the main one, shut down for 4 or 5 months. All of this live sport shut down. So obviously the sports books were losing revenue, and obviously activity on the site went down. So I lost some existing clients for that reason, and my pipeline evaporated, right? And yeah, when we went into lockdown, I think there was maybe like a 4-month period where all of this was going on, and all of these companies that I was trying to sell to, they were looking inwards, right? Because they had all these issues and they wanted to protect themselves for the future. So it was a case of how could they make money from sports if that was an opportunity, or a lot of them pivoted to online casino, right? Because that wasn't impacted. But the problem was a lot of these betting companies, they didn't really focus on their casinos, so they had to do all of this work on the back end to like get their site up to scratch and competitive, right? So in those 4 months, I really struggled. Obviously, my revenue was down. I struggled to get in front of prospects, and as a result, I wasn't really closing any deals. Like I maybe closed 1 or 2 in that 4-month period. So yeah, I was really struggling, and after those 4 months, like it really wore me down. I was burnt out, to be completely honest. And I got to the end of those 4 months, and I thought I've got to be doing something wrong. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I've got to be doing something wrong. So that was when that kind of moment changed, where I was like, right, I need to get some external help here. And yeah, I shopped around, had a little look about, found Benjamin. And I remember watching a couple of his videos. One of them I don't think's up there anymore. He was doing a presentation, and I watched it, and I just saw there was something about him, like a glint in his eye or something. There was something there. I was like, this guy's got something, and I don't know what it is, but I want it. So then I reached out to him. We had a conversation. I went on his boot camp, which was a cold calling boot camp. I'd never done cold calling before, and I did that, and I thought this isn't enough. So I joined one of his coaching clubs, and then I worked with him for, I think, 9 months, 10 months on his coaching club, and tried to put all of this stuff into practice during those 9-10 months. And yeah, that's basically up to the point where Benjamin helped me, and then I was self-employed after that.
Okay, and I guess a good thing is, so I guess, did you see yourself improving dramatically within this job? And then what was the moment where you thought, you know what, fuck this, I can go it alone? Because I know that you and Zach probably shared a very similar experience there.
No, I think Zach's got more balls than I have. Being totally honest. No, first, did I improved a lot. Did I improve a lot? I don't know. I was putting a lot of it into practice. The as you know, the stuff that Benjamin teaches, right, is completely changing your beliefs, your habits, and how you interact in a sales environment, right? And it's a process, not an event, like Benjamin would say. So I invested a lot of time. Fortunately, we had lockdown, right? So I didn't have anything else to do. So I committed to this, and I was learning lots of the theory and putting little bits into practice. But no, to answer your question, I wasn't developing as fast as I wanted to. I think a lot of the reason behind that was obviously there's still a bit of pressure to deliver revenue and results from the company, right? Which I think, restricted my freedom to make mistakes and try new things. So I didn't feel like I was developing, so I quit my job without anything lined up. I had a 3-month notice period, and yeah, I just quit my job. I thought, fuck this, I need to do something different. And the plan was to get employed at another company and try and find one that would kind of embrace me and let me try all these new things and have a bit more freedom. And then I had a chat with Benjamin, and it was a one-to-one session, and he asked me the question. He said, "What's new with you?" And I said, "I've quit my job. I've got nothing lined up." And he laughed at me. He's like, "It's some of the best news I've heard all week." And I didn't understand what he meant. And then we had a conversation around interview techniques, right? So all the stuff that he teaches, how could I implement that in an interview process, obviously with the end goal of getting a job and being employed again. And he said to me afterwards, he's like, "Well, look, you know what problem you're going to have?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, look, you're going to have a couple of problems. The first one is all the problems that you just mentioned to me, you're probably still going to have these with this new company, right?" I was like, "Yeah, that's a good point." And he said, "You know, the other problem you're going to have?" I said, "No." He said, "Look, you're going to be really hard to hire now." And I didn't understand what he meant. He said, "Well, look, you're going to go into these interviews, and in theory, you're going to know a lot more about sales than the hiring manager, the person that's going to hire you, right? And they're not going to like that. They don't want to hire someone who knows more than them. They want someone that's going to step in line and do as they say, right?" And I knew the theory, right, because I've been learning it for months. I lacked real world experience. So he's like, "Yeah, you're going to have all these problems. You've only got one option. You're going to have to go out on your own if you want to solve these problems." And I was like, "Fuck, he's right." And then
He's wise, isn't he?
yeah, and then he said to me, he just said, "Look, why don't you do what I did? I just set up a prospecting business. You can have the freedom to work with who you want, get multiple clients, work when you want, and why don't you do that? And with that, you'll be able to grow and develop all of the stuff, because you'll learn to have the freedom, right, to make mistakes and not worry about all of that and develop and grow." And yeah, after that conversation, that was it. It was like, right, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and that's when the Phone Jacker was born.
Oh, love it. And then what do you remember what your first client was? Who that was?
Yeah, it was a
and
shit
what
show.
happened?
Yeah, it was a shit show.
Same here.
Yeah, it was partly my fault and it was partly my client's fault. I had a lot of issues with data, and I probably took on more than I could for the first client. It was a US client, calling in the US, so a new market. It was a mortgage broker, so a new industry. And yeah, I basically got given a list of thousands of prospects, and every prospect had 4 numbers, but they bought this data from a really, really bad company. And I remember, I can't remember what the percentage was, but I reckon maybe somewhere between 5% and 10% of those numbers were with the actual person. And if you've got US clients, you'll know you can't spot a mobile number easily. They've got the same dialing codes, country or state codes, whatever they call them. So I had office numbers, mobile numbers, home numbers. Some of the conversations were quite funny, but obviously it was very difficult to make any traction. And the other thing was as well that the types of prospects I was speaking to were like, they weren't businesses in a lot of cases. They were basically people who'd invested in real estate, and they were leasing those properties to like your Best Buys, and they've got a pharmacy out there, kind of like Boots. Can't remember what it's called. So it wasn't like I could do any research on these people and get some data myself. And yeah, we came to the conclusion the client didn't want to sort the data out, and I wasn't enjoying it, so we parted ways early on. And yeah, that was the first client. I was like, fuck, this isn't as easy as I thought.
I had the same, very, very similar experience where there's a lesson in this, isn't there? Because this one is my fault, but I sort of took the client's word for it, that there was this gap in the market for something that he solved, which was in the finance space for house builders. It was like mortgages for house builders, and apparently house builders, to his knowledge, didn't have much money. and would get a mortgage with him and then pay back what the profit was at the end or something like that. And then I'm ringing house builders and they're laughing at me. Do you know how much money we've got in the bank? Like multi-millions. I was like, this is fucking weird. So I rang him back and he said, yeah, all I want to do is take them out for a beer. But it was in lockdown. So I was like, I don't understand, mate. Like, they're not going to want to go for a beer with you. No one believes in that stuff. And then anyway, within about 4 days, same sort of thing as you. 4 days dial, and I just said, I think we might want to quit while we're ahead. There was like 3 meetings that I got from him that I felt like were pity meetings, and I had the same thought that you had of, is this going to be loads harder than I thought? But the lesson is, make sure you qualify properly. Don't just. It's easy at the start, isn't it, when there's not loads of money in the bank and you need that new business and you want to get your name out there to just kind of take anything on. But when you treat it properly and go through the right process.
Yeah, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So I'm sure you guys have experienced the more clients you bring on, the more lessons you learn, and you can then start to see early on whether this is going to work or not. But sometimes it's like, I don't know if this is going to work until I start speaking to prospects, right? So yeah, there's always that element of risk for sure.
So what about on the more positive side, what about the first time you realised that actually this is going to work? Who was the first client that you thought, that's brilliant?
First client. I don't know whether I ever thought it from a client. I always thought it from myself. So yeah, before I got my first client, that was the thing, right? The first client didn't work out, and I could have done a better job of managing that situation. The client could have done a better job of giving me good data, right? But before that, what I did when I set up, I basically built, the plan was to get 3 clients. That was the end goal, but I wanted to get there gradually. I didn't want to take 3 clients on and be like, fuck, this is stressful and have all these issues. So I basically created 3 lists of 100 prospects from different industries, and the plan was to get a client from each list eventually. And it didn't take long before I started setting meetings. So I was like, if I could do this for myself, I could do it for anyone. I just got to find the right client, not necessarily the right client, but just manage it better and make sure that everything's set up for success as much as possible, right? So yeah, I was doing that before I got the first client, and I just thought, this doesn't matter. I've done it for myself, so it will work for other clients, right? And then since then, I think I've had maybe 6, 7 clients in the last year, I think. About that. Yeah, a few didn't work out from other reasons, and I've got 2 now that I'm still working with. So, yeah.
Amazing. And we obviously, a lot of sales reps listen to our podcast, and I think we could probably speak about the same problems and challenges and wins that we've both experienced, because we're in a very similar line of work. One of the biggest things that we probably face in the early days was, and I know especially for Zach, and then I came in and it was something as well, we're not together. You've got to be, and I know you spoke about this, like good work ethic, but you've got to be self-motivated. And on the days where it's not working, it's very easy, if you've not got a boss or you to say, well, you know what, sack it off, I'll try again tomorrow. And for people that are in sales that might start off cold calling, have a really bad hour and think, you know what, screw this, I'm going to go back on LinkedIn and post a selfie and see if that works and brings me in a couple of clients. What have you done to overcome that in terms of like self-motivation and burning out when it comes to being so much on the phones?
Yeah, really good question. I can't remember. I was speaking about this recently, actually. I can't remember who. I was on another podcast. That was it. So when I don't know if you experienced this as well, Zach. When I first started out, right, going back to the whole Benjamin stuff, right. He talks about cold calling and like the sales meetings, right. So there's a different structure to each one. A lot of it's the same, but the structure, different structure. And I thought to myself, right, this will be a really good opportunity, first and foremost, to focus on cold calling and try and tackle this from a different approach, right? And I thought going into that, the fact that I didn't have any income and like now I'm self-employed, everything's on me, there's no salary coming in, no no nothing to support me. Everything's on my own shoulders. I thought that would be enough motivation for me to absolutely hammer the phones, and it wasn't. And when I first started out, I had days where I was like, I can't be asked to do this. I'll do it tomorrow. Like to your point there, Jack, I had moments where I started cold calling and something didn't go to plan, and I thought, right, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll focus on this. So my activity fluctuated, and it took me a couple of weeks before I was like, right, I've got to sort this out because I need to get clients, right? I need to get food on the table. And basically I started like looking at all of this knowledge from all these different areas on, like, obviously mindset from Benjamin, building good habits, like James Clear's book on Atomic Habits was really good. And just all these little bits of information that I knew about but I didn't implement. So all the stuff around setting like KPIs and targets, knowing your math of prospecting, that's a big one, because if I know I don't know, like I've got 300 prospects to call, just me going one by one and calling through them with no end objective other than to get 300 call dials is really fucking boring, right? And it's not very motivating, and I did quit. So I was like, I've got to be smart about this and start measuring conversations. So I set myself a daily target of conversations, and I worked it back from how many meetings do I need to get, how many conversations do I need to have to get a meeting, and when do I want to get those meetings by, and then I set out those conversations. That was a big one, because breaking it down and having that daily target really focused me. So those moments where I was like, I can't be asked to do this, it's like, just do the conversations. You've got 2 more left, just do it. And you'll find yourself, you will do it if you push yourself. And the other one was building good habits, right? So I never used to do this when I was employed. Like prospecting was an afterthought. It's like, if I've got some spare time, I'll do some prospecting. Whereas I flipped it on its head. It's like, right, just do the prospecting first thing, get it out the way, and start building structure and habits around your prospecting, right? So listening back to calls. I started journaling as well, so I could get instant kind of feedback when I was doing things well from myself, obviously, but also what do I need to do differently? Where do I need to improve? And I'd look at that the next day and be like, right, I need to focus on that, and just constantly build day by day. And then just being more disciplined as well, right? In general, like started going to the gym more, like taking breaks, but like building in regular habits so that my day had the same structure every single day. It's got a lot easier. So yeah, those are a few things. There's a little bit more to it, but yeah, those were the few of the big ones.
No, I totally.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I would. Even when people start with us, obviously we've hired people, and when Jack came on board as well, taking away things like call time and those sort of metrics, because they're kind of crap and nonsense. I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you would echo that. But measuring how many decision makers have I spoke to, how many decision makers do I need to speak to get a meeting, and then working backwards from that. So you know, I don't know, like for our business, it might be like you speak to 10, you got to book 2 meetings. If you book 2 meetings a day, that's 40 a month. You can't work with 40 people. So you know, once you've done that, and then when I same as you, a lot of the stuff you say is like you're echoing the same sentiment. But yeah, I did that same model, and then was consistent at booking 2 people a day, and then the problem was that it was just overbooked. And then Jack came in, same model, overbooked, hire someone else, and that's kind of the way we've grown it. And yeah, I agree with you. It's almost like, I was talking to someone the other day about, you've almost got to have quite a boring day from the outside if someone was looking in. You know, like you said, I go to the gym at a certain time of day. I like spend time with my children at a certain time of day. So like a walk with my dog at a certain time. Like the day is actually quite predictable, and because of that, you know that realistically your job's probably done every day by X time, unless you kind of broke those habits. And you kind of manage that state, don't you? Salespeople, like I know when I was employed, it was like up and down depending on if I was getting on with my boss at the minute, if the date was good, if I was hating myself that day and felt like I'd done something wrong.
It is, but it's a lot more rewarding.
Predictable and boring.
Right, and it's a lot less stressful for a start. You know exactly what to expect every day. Once you get into the routine of it, it becomes a lot easier. Cold calling becomes a lot easier. And yeah, it's a lot more rewarding. I remember like when like I had the bad weeks and the bad months earlier on, people used to always ask me, how's the business going? And because I had that structure in place, things like might not have been going that well on the outside, or like meetings not being set or having issues and all this kind of stuff. But you always have that reflection of, well, I'm a lot better than I was yesterday, and I've done what I needed to do, followed the process to kind of encourage all of those good habits, and rewarding ticking them off every day, knowing, right, I've done it, or just go again tomorrow. And there's always something to focus on, right? Whether it's mainly the cold calling, if there's something that you need to work on, or just getting that little bit better every single day, and just that's what motivated me and kept me coming back in the next day, right? Even though the day is fairly boring.
Yeah, and we hear from SDRs as well, and I think I know companies that their SDRs, that their targets are too low, or they just don't want to get on the phone because they've either not been trained, they don't feel confident. Like, let's face it, we know how hard it is hitting the phones day in, day out. But people say things like, well, I don't want to call people on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and all these different things. Like, what are your thoughts on the rules of like cold calling? Because I know that you are very eat the frog, get it done. Do you think there are any rules? We shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be breaking that rule?
Nah, there are no rules, are there really? Just style. Just like we said, like have that structure and know what you're trying to do and what you need to do, and just go and do it. And obviously, like the conversation side of things is so important because you can control that, right? So if you know you can get a meeting every 8 or 10 conversations, and you know you've got a target of 8 meetings a month, that's like 20 conversations a week, right? It's fucking nothing. But obviously a lot of SDRs don't break that down, they don't know that, and there's a lot of pressure on them to deliver, right? But in terms of like time of day calling, I don't know. Friday afternoons has sometimes been good. It was really good in lockdown because no one was out with clients and all that kind of stuff. It's changed a little bit, but other than that, like, who cares? Just get it done. It might take 100 dials, it might take 80 dials to hit your conversation target, but just do it.
Yeah, I've booked meetings with people on holiday. I booked meetings with a bloke at 6 a.m. I got Washington confused, so I thought it was Washington DC. Yeah, but it's 6 a.m. in the morning. Obviously, he was pissed off. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, but they went for it. I was just like, because it's at those things. If you just remain consistent and you do the, I think too many people kind of hype themselves up about the end result, and it's this thing for life anyway. But it's just do the process, get the job done in the same way that I get up and I go for a run. I don't need to enjoy it. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I bet with the Washington, the US one, I bet you just asked him a question, right? At some point, you just asked him a question. He's probably a bit resistant at first, right? But as soon as you get prospects talking about themselves, they forget the whole context of how you got there in the first place, right? Whether you got through a gatekeeper and they didn't know you were a sales call, or like you said, if they're on holiday, or if you woke them up at 6 in the morning, there might be some resistance, but you can always just say, look, before you go, can I ask a question? Ask them the question, they get talking, and then they won't shut up if it's relevant for them, right? So it doesn't really matter, do you know what I mean? It's just people lose the context of the sales call as soon as you get them talking about themselves.
Sure, and I think we as salespeople, especially people that are new to it, think so much about like, oh, well, I can't call that bloke. He said he didn't want to take a sales call last week. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, but maybe you caught him on the day where he just caught his wife shagging the postman or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's all these different things. Stop beating yourself up and stop thinking that people give, and it's advice for life. Stop thinking that people are thinking about you, because the truth of the matter is they're probably just thinking about themselves, and that you apply that in sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Even after the cold call, no matter how well that cold call's gone, as soon as they put the phone down, they probably don't spend a second thinking about it, or you.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like any context. Maybe if you piss someone off, they're probably a little bit irate for 10, 15 seconds, but especially if you're
They get over
calling,
it.
like, yeah, if you're calling C level or directors, MDs, like they're busy people. They've got shit to do. As soon as that phone call ends, they'll be back on it, and yeah, you'll be an afterthought.
Absolutely. So what would be for someone you've been there and you've seen it and you've grown to this. I'm not going to call you a LinkedIn guru because it might make you a bit sick, but you've got a
Good.
great LinkedIn presence and your videos. I love them. That duck noise where you're cutting out the name goes right through me. But I love your videos. What would be like the one bit of advice that you would say to somebody up and coming that might think, you know what, screw it. If Callum can do it, I might go out on my own as well.
Ooh, what a question. One bit of advice. I mean, get good at it. If you're good, here's the thing, like we were talking about this, Zach and I, just before we came on. If you're good at it, if you're sat there and you're good at cold calling, you consistently get results, you do all the things that we talked about, you don't do it with any pressure, and yeah, you're thinking about doing it, then just go and do it, because there's not many people out there like us doing this. There are obviously companies, but on the self-employed front, right, like depending on how much work you want to do for each client, like you could probably maximum do 3, maybe 4 clients, but it's a lot of work managing them, and managing everything that comes alongside it if you're self-employed. But if you're good at it, like you're going to get paid more by doing it yourself, have all the freedom to work with who you want and charge what you want and all that kind of stuff. And there's like 50 million companies, registered businesses in the UK, something like that. I know a lot of them are self-employed people like me, but they need help getting prospects, right? And a lot of them have got money. So it's a massive space out here, and there's not that many people in that space. So yeah, there's a market for us. There's market for more of
Exactly.
us.
And 3, if you're saying 3 in 50 million, doesn't sound hard, does it?
Exactly that. There's so many companies out there that need help with finding new business. Who doesn't want more clients? Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of people
Although
can't
you'd be
be asked.
surprised, I'm sure you speak to people that say, "Yeah, I couldn't be busier," and yeah, exactly. So, what would you say, or when someone reaches out to you, like a potential client, a prospect reaches out to you, what are some of the red flags of like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare, or actually you can probably
Job
do this yourself?
titles,
What are
one.
the things that you look out for to quickly kind of disqualify?
Not often. Like, from time to time, I get people that are like at manager level, and they might even mention that they need to still get this signed off by their boss. That's always a red flag. And the types of the words that they use. When there's a lot of uncertainty, and yeah, like using words like I think and maybe and all these sorts of things, they're red flags. But also, the biggest one I think is when people ask questions out the gate on the very specifics, like how much do you cost, how does it work, all these sorts of things. Because I always think these guys probably don't have that big problems in their world, right? It's maybe just a nice to have. I've had people, like when I first started out, I still, not so much now, I would meet with anyone because I just wanted the practice in the sales meeting environment, right? And obviously, like being fairly new to this is my first year, I wanted to speak to as many people as I could, learn about the kind of problems in their world, and obviously learn the signs of the people that had genuine interest and those that didn't. And yeah, you can always tell from the questions that they ask out the gate whether there's genuine interest or not. So those would be the 3.
Yeah. And what about, we find that it's the hardest thing to teach is probably something you can't teach, which is tonality. So actually, how you see it on LinkedIn, don't you? Like, here's this great pattern interrupt, but they probably all work if you say them the right way with enough.
That's a good question. So a couple of
How do you
moments
sound
in the last
first
few
start
months
off?
stand
How do
out
you
in
sound
that. I was on another podcast the other day, and he played a video of one of my LinkedIn cold call videos. I think it was from around February. And I listen back to my calls now. I obviously create videos still, so I hear my own voice. And we're talking a difference of 4 months, 5 months. And I could just hear, like, I don't know what it is. I think it's just more, less apprehension in the voice, less nerves. Although I never really used to get nerves after the first call, those would go. So I don't think it was that, but I think it's just a level of like maybe certainty, but also just the more you do it, the less you give a shit, right? And I think that carries in your voice. So I think that's the main one. And yeah, there was another moment, I can't remember it now. Similar thing. Oh, I posted something on LinkedIn. That was it. And I could hear in my voice there was a lot of apprehension and uncertainty, the same thing. And I posted something on there about, I think there was a lot of reason behind why the call went so bad. And everyone commented saying, I don't know what you mean, like, you sound fine. But I could just tell myself, because I listened back to my calls so much and familiar with my own voice. And I was like, yeah, you can't, unless you know it yourself, you can't really tell the differences, right? I don't know if we played a video from now versus 8 months ago, probably be quite a bit of difference, but maybe 3-4 months ago, you might not be able to detect it, but I probably would.
Very interesting. And obviously, you've grown a great brand on LinkedIn, sharing your videos. I know I was working in a co-working space doing my standard pattern interrupt, and a girl come up to me and went, "Oh, you're using Callum Beecroft stuff." And I was like, amazing. So, like, no, it was like you fucking bastard. I wasn't so sad. But you've grown a brilliant brand on LinkedIn, and I imagine that brings in an influx of clients and people making inquiries. So what is next for you? I want to talk about the new project coming up, because that looks quite exciting.
Yeah, so I literally announced on Wednesday, I don't know, a couple of days ago. I've basically been working on this for like 3 months now. And it's one of those subscription publication things where kind of like a newsletter, but along with a newsletter, it's like a website, right? So all of the content that I put out will basically be housed and archived in this site. And yeah, I was telling Zach earlier on, I basically like producing all this content on LinkedIn for free, and obviously a lot of it gets, mainly the videos get a lot of engagement, and I'm sat on all of these call recordings from the last year, so fuck knows how many's in there, and I just thought to myself, like, they're just sitting there doing nothing, so why don't I do something with them? And then I thought, well, look, I've made a lot of mistakes in the past year. And there's a lot of salespeople that follow me, so it's like, why don't I just produce all this content and try and help some salespeople along the way, right? So primarily it's going to be like me analysing my own cold calls. So I'll tell people what I think went wrong, why it went wrong, and what I would have done differently. That'll be the main part of the content, and then alongside that, just videos, articles, tips and stuff, all on cold calling. To try and help some salespeople who are struggling with it, right? So we know there's a lot of them out there. So yeah, I'm launching that on the 1st of August, so I think it's a week Monday. And yeah, it'll be a newsletter kind of thing. I'll send out 2 bits of content, one every Tuesday, one every Thursday. One of them will be a cold call recording. The other one will be some of the other content I just mentioned. And yeah, if anyone's interested, just go to my website, thephonejacker.co.uk, and there's at the top, the hang up. Click on that. There's a little bit of content in there that explains more about it and how you can get involved, and then subscribe, and hopefully, yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
Sounds very exciting. And I guess if you were to like fast forward 5 years, 10 years into the future, I know it's very hard because some days you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. But with this going and this whole like like the coaching side of things? Do you feel like you'd want to go down the Benjamin Dennehy route? Because look, let's face it, he's not going to be around forever, is he? He'll be flying high in the sky, and I don't mean he's going to die. I mean he's going to become a pilot. But it's one of those things. Would you want to go down that route? Are there any other angles you'd want to go down?
Yeah, potentially. I was chatting to him a few months back, and he told me he was going to retire. I think it's end of 2024, right? So yeah, when he retires, I'm basically going to take his UK's most hated sales trainer, and he's going to pass on the baton.
Amazing.
We were joking about it, but potentially, yeah. I don't want to cold call forever, right? So it's definitely something that I'm thinking about, but it's such a difficult one, right? Because for you guys, I know Jack, you joined in like January, right? So it's been 6 months for you. Like so much has happened, like even for you guys, right? Your growth's been phenomenal, and so much has happened in such a short space of time. You're like, fuck, what? Where's it all gone? What's happened to this time, right? You've achieved so much, and then you look forward. You're like, right, I've got a long fucking way to go, right? And it's hard to picture yourself in 5-10 years what that would look like. But ultimately, the goal is to get to some form of retirement, right? And what I mean by that is the definition of like where I don't have to work anymore, where I'm financially free. I probably would work because I don't know what else I'd do, but just having that freedom, that's got to be the end goal, the ultimate freedom, right? To choose when you work and how you work and not have to worry about money. How I get there, I don't know. Like the training side of things, definitely one element of it for sure, but we'll see.
Very exciting. So you already mentioned your website there, www.thephonejacker.co.uk. If people do want to find you, I know you're probably not taking on new clients at the moment, but if they want to get in touch and inquire anyway or sign up, where else can they get you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. Although on LinkedIn I'll send you to my website. So yeah, either or. Yeah, LinkedIn, obviously Callum Beecroft, the Phone Jacker. Some more information there. My website, email address is on both, callum@thephonejacker.co.uk. And yeah, alongside the hang up, I'm going to be putting some content out there on YouTube as well. So I've got a YouTube channel. There's nothing there right now. But yeah, I obviously want to grow the hang up. So I'll be putting some content out there, which will be free, obviously. So check that out. But that's about it, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's always good to catch up with you because I know we're on very similar journeys, so it's always good to touch base and see where you're up to.
No, I appreciate you inviting me on, and yeah, I think it's the first time I spoke to both of you, right? But I was saying to Zach, like, I think Zach started this maybe 2 months before me, but like to see it, it's funny, like seeing how both of us have gone on different paths. Like you guys have got 12 people, is it now? It's just me. And yeah, it's been fascinating to watch you guys, and like fucking impressive, to be honest, because I can't be asked to hire people and have that responsibility and everything else that comes with it, right? So yeah, to see you guys doing it is really impressive. So yeah, well done.
I appreciate that.
The real test is if we continue on these paths, to do like a time lapse of how we.
Well, the good thing for you, right, is the more people you hire, the less work you've got to do, right? In theory. Whereas I've got.
In theory.
Yeah.
The work changes. The work changes. I think we might have naively thought that.
Admin, by the sounds of things.
You get work in an area that perhaps you're less prepared for.
Nice.
Yeah, but then I've brought someone in that's started in August, help with that, like an operations director starting. But I mean more the way you think about it. You would expect someone else to think about it, but they don't, because it's not the same. It doesn't mean as much. So it's how do you navigate those things? And these are all, me and Jack are big on like going out and a lot of self-learning and things like that. So it's like, what can I read and teach myself to help bridge that gap? So there's been hours and hours of learning that's gone in,
Yeah,
and
no, I bet.
still living the
It's a
benefit
funny
thinking,
one, isn't it? Because,
I don't know
yeah,
how the fucking
even
wise
for
are
me,
about
like,
Chris
all of this
Reza.
stuff with the hang up and shit, like, I've now got to start thinking about SEO and growing that and more of the marketing side, YouTube, understanding algorithms, the SEO on that as well. Yeah, all these new things to learn. So, yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Well, Callum, we work with some great clients. I'll book you a few meetings and it'll be absolute. You'll help me get my commission at the end of the month.
Yeah, just call me up.
Exactly, I will do. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Callum.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
Stop.